Ready, go. I don't even know how you go, but here we go. I will commence to stalling by starting out with saying that as we roll into summertime and the sun sets later and it's more above us than to the south of us, you'll notice I get little glints of sunlight coming through my blinds, and it's distracting to me because it catches my eye and you guys might see little spots, but there you go. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I don't even know where to begin. I assume a lot of people probably feel that way. There's just a lot to go through. I've got notes, not a lot of notes, honestly. Just kind of haphazard thoughts all over the place. I guess I'll just jump into some of these notes and we'll see where it goes. Couple ideas that I was experimenting with, with this album clearly being about healing and dealing with, self-trauma, abuse. I mean, just so much. Things that we're all very well aware of, right? There was one comment somebody asked, I don't remember which video it was, saying something about, I wonder if you'll draw any references from this album, any parallels between this album and Pink Floyd's The Wall. And it was funny that comment had come up because I had thought about that a little bit prior to seeing that, in that with Pink Floyd's The Wall, the album is this cycle of this rock star who his dad dies in the war. He has this really oppressive mom. The school system's a meat grinder and doesn't let him, be creative and free. And he has, this wife that cheats on him, and he's on the tour. And I mean, it's just a shit show. And throughout the whole album, the whole concept is everything, all these things, his relationship with his mom is a brick in the wall. His wife is a brick in the wall. His dead dad's a brick in the wall. Like, just all in all, you're all just a brick in the wall. And then the wall goes up and he becomes very isolated within himself, depressed, sad, whatever. And then the whole album concludes with him more or less putting his own feelings on trial. And one of the last tracks is called The Trial, and the judge, it's a really neat song, but the judge sentences him to being exposed before all of his peers. And then you tear down the wall, and there's this crazy sound and all the music, and they tear down the wall. But the way the album is structured is that the final track concludes as a loop into the beginning of the opening track. So it just starts over again. And I always wondered, it was interesting that it would end with the sentencing, but then you never got to see the next step, which is him actually going through with the punishment of being exposed before all of his peers. And I feel like this album could play that role, And Kendrick is an incredibly intricate person, huge heart, very introspective, just probably thinks himself to death half the times, And I feel like this could be today's Wall, the sentencing or the punishment or whatever, where he just fucking does it. He exposes himself before all of his peers in that sense, and the parallel isn't that strong in the sense that it's not like somebody else has done it to him, and maybe it isn't necessarily a sentence, but he does do that. He just lays it all out there. What's nice about this album, though, versus something like The Wall, is that it isn't a sentence. It's something that he's using not as a form of punishment for himself, but as a way to set himself free, which is great. I mean, that's great. So there's that. I toured around with this idea of maybe this album is kind of his own personal book of revelation. With each thing that he talks about is kind of like a cracking of the seal and the end of the world and all. It's all just he's this is it. This is the final end piece. And I liked the idea, but really as I played with it, I felt like I was forcing it. Because it just sounded cool in my head, like, yeah, this is his own personal book of revelation, and I think maybe there is some validity there, and in accepting some of the things that he's accepting and being open about it, but thematically it doesn't really match up that well. I guess let's hit some tracks. We'll talk about some tracks. I'm really not going to tear into the track listing too much because I think everybody else is doing that. There's some other things I want to talk about specifically that'll probably take a while, so I won't worry too much about the tracks. The Crown is by far my favorite song off the album, by far. And I would say not only is it my favorite song off the album, it is like now seated at a very, very special table. For years, there's always the question of what's your favorite song of all time, which to me is the most ridiculous, impossible question. And coming from the rock world, for years, my default answer was always the song Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. Great song. It's got a lot of personal meaning for me. Love that song. Then Tool came out with Fear Inoculum, and on there was a song called Invincible. And that song very easily, surprisingly, took the top spot, and then Wish You Were Here went down to number 2. And now Kendrick Lamar rolls in with Crown. And, you know, there's so many great songs out there, so many songs that I love, so many songs that have special meaning to me, but Crown, with being what it is, and this is the same thing with Invincible as well. Tool's Invincible has earned my top spot because of who made it, when they made it in their career, what the song was about, what it was saying, the music, everything. You know, it's this full package, multiple layers. And The Crown does the same thing, or just Crown does the same thing. Kendrick having this basically trance type mantra of, I can't please everybody, like realizing it, accepting it, and then where it's placed in the album, it's like because after that it's Silent Hill, and he's talking about I'm stressed out, you know, head up, chest out, I'm stressed out. Talks about I can't be your savior. It rolls into Auntie Diaries, Mr. Morale, Mother I Sober, Mirror. I mean, it's just like he's holding it in, and then when he realizes I can't please everybody, it just the dam breaks. And he lets it all out, in my perspective. You know, the first half of the album too has a lot of stuff going on, but I feel like Crown is a very specific turning point, like a realization, an acceptance. And so that, it being Kendrick and doing that, him doing that at this part of his career, the music with it, the piano, the mindset of it, it's an amazing song. So my top 3 of all time now are Invincible. I don't know if Crown beats out Wish You Were Here. Probably not, just because Wish You Were Here has so much personal meaning for me. But Crown is there too. So I picture a little table, and it's Tool, and it's Pink Floyd, and it's Kendrick Lamar, and I think, wow, that's nice. That's nice company, nice company, right there. Worldwide Steppers is still one of my favorites too, man. That beat that just womp, 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 womp. It's almost, I want to say like demonic, possessive, it's just relentless. That beat, man. There's something about it. I love it. Die Hard's cool, great sound. Father Time is an awesome track. I love pretty much everything that he's saying in that song, especially how he's saying, you know, daddy issues, that's on me. It's not everybody else's fault. It's on me to deal with this, to process this, to get it handled. It's not other people's fault, you know, what his dad did for him or did not do for him. Rich Spirit's got a great beat. We Cry Together. Obviously, I don't listen to that very often. I think it's important for the album. I think it's important for what Kendrick is saying, especially that line, "This is what the world sounds like to me." I think that's huge. And then just this ugly, horrific fight that's filled with shallow, meaningless phrases and buzzwords that are only designed to trigger somebody and never, ever say what's actually wrong, what the actual problem is. You know, it's a almost 6-minute track, and there's all this screaming and yelling and this back and forth, and nothing is ever said. And I think that's very important. It's very important because I think, you know, my takeaway is that's what he's trying to say. There's all this ugliness and all this hatred and all these words that are flying around, and like the album is heavily implying, everyone's just tap dancing around the issue. No one's actually saying what the problem is. They're just yelling at each other, and it's worthless. It's completely worthless. Purple Hearts, I really don't listen to at all. I tried to get into it. I can't get into it. I like Ghostface Killah's verse on that one, especially since he specifies "shut the fuck up when you hear his love," and it's a capital H. You know, that makes the whole theme make more sense. But I'm not into that song at all. Silent Hill I go back and forth on, but overall I enjoy it. Auntie Diaries. Should I get into that one now? Yeah, I suppose so. So this is one of the bigger ones I have. And I've been reading online. I've been seeing people, talking about how they're upset with the words that he used. They're upset with, dead naming. They're upset with the wrong pronouns being used, all this other stuff. I watched Professor Sky's review, 94 minutes, his talk about the album. And there was a part where he was talking about him and his daughter were in the car and in listening to that song, and his daughter was like cringing at it, like it was offensive to her. And I found that really interesting because, well, and I'll get into this. And then, I watched Turning the Tables. I didn't get to watch the whole reaction, but I watched Kevin talk about his brother on that song. And that was interesting, and what his perspective was on specifically the F slur. Now, I say slur, and I have to admit that I feel like I got lucky. I dodged a bullet without realizing I was dodging a bullet on Friday, because I almost said that during the reaction. Because up until recently, I'd never considered it a slur. And if anybody who's freaking out right now, just hear me out for a couple minutes here. At the beginning of the reaction video, I talked about ignorance and how I feel like the word ignorance has been twisted to where if somebody says they're ignorant or you're ignorant, then there's also this implied statement of you're bad, you're evil. But really, ignorance is just a lack of knowledge. That's really what it is. And a lot of evil, bad things come from ignorance. But ignorance in itself is really just that. And it's interesting reading the discourse online about what Kendrick should have done and why this song is so offensive because of the language that he used. Especially how it ends with, what Kendrick is saying, what him and his cousin are saying back and forth, how there's no room for contradiction. You can't say that if you don't let the white girl say this. And then immediately on the next track, it drops into that sample of the guy freaking out about that live performance with the girl on stage where she was rapping verbatim all the words that she wasn't supposed to say, and how he was just fucking pissed off. I couldn't sleep because I felt that shit. He's yelling. And it really helped me understand some things that I did not understand before. Kevin from Turn the Tables, he helped me understand some stuff too. It was really kind of eye-opening for me, and it helped me face head-on ignorance, my own ignorance. And I want to share this with you. I want to be open about this because I feel like it would be a disservice to the album, to everything that Kendrick has put on this, everything that he has revealed in his own life, to not join in. Say, hey, here's where I was wrong, So how do I do this? I am a foul-mouthed motherfucker, right? I have no problem swearing at all. No problem swearing. I love swearing. Fuck is my favorite word. I've shown my son the little YouTube video about how fuck is the most versatile word in the English language. You can use it in all these different ways. We've shown him the great comedy bit of this guy, I forget the stand-up comedian, but using the word shit, and how in the English language it's just wildly confusing because it's used in all these different ways and he doesn't understand it. It's very funny. The F slur, for me, up until about 4 days ago, I always considered it to be a swear word, not a slur. And for those of you who might find that outrageous or unbelievable or ridiculous or whatever, I want you to just kind of step back for a second and consider what that means. Yeah. Don't interrupt me. I'll tell you later. I apologize. I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't want to lose my train of thought. When I was a kid, people said that. Sometimes, honestly, not a lot. It was more gay. Oh, that's gay. Don't be gay, blah, 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 whatever. And like Kendrick is saying, in the song, stupid kids didn't know no better, whatever. And the silver lining I was trying to get to here was take that idea of, I was never in a situation where somebody used that slur in a slur context. At least not that I can really recall, honestly. And the same thing with the word gay. I mean, California, I don't know, being in a kid in the 90s, it was just, everything was gay. And it didn't really mean anything. And so I never thought of it. And I really never thought of the other word that way as well, even though it just wasn't really said as often. And I've met some people who are gay. I've had a couple of acquaintances. I don't have any like close friends who are gay or anything like that. But, hearing Kevin tell his story about his brother, hearing Professor Sky talk about his daughter who cringes at it, it made me realize, okay, some people see this as a slur, and I should just say I should probably also see it as a slur and understand that I didn't know that or realize that, And then when I did step back and think about it and just tried to envision somebody using that word in that context, then yeah. I mean, of course it's a slur. Of course it is. And it was kind of surprising to me that I had never really realized that before. And it made me wonder, well, shit, what else is out there? What else is kind of in my mind? And I think it's somewhat of a benign thing, maybe not necessarily benign, but more of a swear word and not a slur. I remember being a kid and the joke was always the sweet old grandma who would use the N-word. And she would use it like in a nice way because she didn't know any better. And it was like, Grandma, you can't say stuff like that anymore. Oh, whatever, Not that I had grandparents that did that or friends' grandparents did that, but that was always kind of the joke. I remember comedians telling jokes like that and shit. And it was just, And I lost my train of thought. Let me see if I can find it again. Oh, okay. So here we go. So then I started thinking, okay, if that's a slur and I didn't realize that, is there an equivalency? Is there an equivalency to how offensive that word is and how it's used towards somebody who's gay versus somebody who's black in the N-word? Is there an equivalency? Is it an equal equivalency? Is it equally offensive? And then I thought, well, the only way to really derive that is to somehow try and measure the hate that comes with it. And when I think of somebody using the F slur intentionally in a slur context, I think, there's a lot of hate that comes from that. And same thing with the N-word. And so then I think, okay, this is kind of shocking, unsettling for me. Like, holy shit, these are powerful words. They do mean something. And then it puts me right back into the album because it concludes with Kendrick talking about the white girl on stage. And then the next track, it drops into the guy being upset. I have to assume it's a black guy. I don't know who it was, but I'm assuming it's a black guy because he's expressing fury over a white girl saying that on stage. And then you get into, okay, well, what about hip hop? And all the times you've heard the F slur in hip hop, or how many people who are, we'll say, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, part of that culture, how many times have they used that term in their personal lives towards somebody, whatever? And really, what if Kendrick is trying to say, hey, there's no room for contradictions here. There's no room for contradictions. That's what he says in the track. You can't say this if you're not willing to let somebody else say that. And all of that to say, the people who are upset with Auntie's Diaries and the language that was used and how he should have done something that was more, politically correct or self-aware or whatever the phrase you want to call. None of this would have happened in my brain without this coming up, flying into my face with people talking about it and me realizing, oh shit, I've been wrong. I have been wrong. So I would say to anybody who is upset with Auntie Diaries and how it makes you feel and how these words are offensive, well, what would I say? I would say, there are people, hopefully more than just me. I hope it's not just me learning from this, but because he did it in this way, you're forced to look at it to an extent. I mean, people don't have to, and the people who don't want to won't. They will look away. They will ignore it. They will ignore the contradiction. But not everybody will. And so, you take this album, the whole journey, everything that it's about. And I personally have to believe that Kendrick is trying to help other people grow. It is for him, but it's really for everybody. It's for all of us. in some capacity, right? I mean, obviously there's some tracks like Mother I Sober that are very specific to him. But in some capacity, he's trying to help all of us. And for me, he has. In that respect, I learned something about myself, not from like an evil way, but just there was a word, and I don't, it's not like I use it all the time, but it just existed back there, and I never really understood what it meant to people. And now I do. So I have a lot more respect for it. And honestly, I'm kind of shocked that I almost said it on Friday when I was talking about that song during the first reaction. So there's that. Okay, so Kendrick's final album. I have been the only one really kind of harping on this a little bit, and it's been interesting reading other people's comments, other people's interpretations, and it's become so consistent that no one else is really talking about it that I'm just like, okay, well, I'm wrong, I guess. I'm wrong. And that's okay. It's not like I want to be right. It's not like I want Kendrick to never make music again. But what I would like to do is just share some of my reasoning. I mean, I think the final track, do I have it up here? The final track, Mirror. Sorry, I'm getting all burpy now. To me, I don't know, man. I don't know how you can see it any other way. Now, people have said, okay, Bob, he's got his own label, so he's contractually free from Top Dog. He's got his own label. He's going to do stuff on that. And I go, okay. But, I mean, didn't Dr. Dre do that too? Didn't he just start his own label and basically step away from actually making his own albums? I think he made one more after 2001, right? But didn't he focus more on signing people and just kind of being more of a label person and just kind of involved from the background type of thing? Because everything that we know about Kendrick, everything that he said on this album, and actually I'll weave in my little story here about the cover. So before the album released on Twitter, I shared my opinions on the cover, and I thought, okay, the way Kendrick is looking out the window, which is implied by light, you can't see the window, but there's light there, so it looks like he's looking out a window. He's got his crown on, which indicates a sacrifice, because that was Jesus, his crown of thorns that he wore when he died. And then he's got his gun. He's there with his family. He's just got this look on his face, like, at the time I said it looks like somebody who does not expect to come back. And in the room, it's kind of this sullen energy, but no one really looks overly upset either. So maybe they're aware of his intentions. Maybe they're not. At the time I said they probably don't realize what he's planning to go do. Like, they probably don't realize he's planning on not coming back. Now that the album is out, I wonder, he's wearing his crown, and that's very indicative of Jesus when he was crucified. And when Jesus was crucified, he didn't want to be crucified. He didn't want to do that. I don't remember the line exactly in the Bible, and of course there's different interpretations, but he said, "Father, please, take this cup from me," or however it works. He did not want to die. Okay? He knew he was going to die, and he did not want to do that. I mentioned that specifically because even though the album is done, Kendrick still has to go on tour. In the Bible, when Jesus dies, he goes to hell. He goes to hell for 3 days, and then he arose into heaven after that, right? If you're a sex addict and you go on tour, and what you want from your life is to be loyal to your wife and be there for your kids, going on tour is like going to hell. And there's another image that's now been released that's associated with the album where he's in that like sofa chair and he's asleep and the crown's all sideways and heavy looking, like he's exhausted, like he's someone who is tired from wearing the crown. To me, I take that as he doesn't want to wear the crown anymore. And now when I look at the album cover, I don't think of him as somebody who's looking out the window thinking he's not going to come back. I think of him as somebody who's looking out the window knowing he has to go through hell before he can go to heaven, which is being with his wife and kids. That's my take. That's my interpretation. I really want to emphasize, you guys, I'm not trying to say I'm right and everybody else is wrong. I'm not trying to say I'm providing my reasoning. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and that's all there is to it. I'm just, I'm giving my interpretation. Sometimes people have said, oh, Bob, because you've got this outside perspective, sometimes you see things differently, and others are so into it that they don't want to see whatever. Anyway, there you go. The last words he says to us: "Sorry I didn't save the world. I was too busy building my own again. When will you let me go? I trust you'll find independence. If not, all is forgiven." And I went through this one part on the reaction. I was talking about, she. I clicked on the annotation the other day, and it was talking about No Name and how she was on Twitter one day calling out all the big name rappers for not saying stuff about the George Floyd protests and what have you. And so that makes sense. I've kind of backed off on that being the music industry calling them out and stuff like that. But at the same time, Kendrick does these double meanings. So I don't know, man. Here's what really puts me into this idea of this is Kendrick's last album. Is the counter argument is, well, of course he'll make another album on his new label. And the first question that comes to my mind is, why? Why? For what? For money? He doesn't want money. For fame? He doesn't want the fame. Accolades? He's got them all. He's the best one. He knows he's the best one. I know he's the best one. You guys know he's the best one. His catalog is incredible. He's got a Pulitzer fucking Prize. This album will go down in history as one of the most incredible albums ever created. It will. It will, in my opinion. There's no way around it. Why? Why would he make another album? That's the only question that exists in my mind of, he's going to make another one. Why? He doesn't need to. He doesn't want the crown anymore. He has nothing left to prove. He frees himself. Mother I Sober, that's what he's talking about. Freeing everybody, freeing himself, getting out of it. Just getting, I shouldn't harp on that too much. That's very specific to some of the traumas that he's talking about and other things. But I don't know, guys. I don't know, man. And I do feel more out to lunch than before, just seeing so many other people not say this. But there you go. I think I have to sneeze. I don't want to, because then I have to edit out 4 seconds, and that takes an hour to... Mother I Sober, on the reaction, I didn't say anything. I still don't feel like I need to say anything. It's an incredible song. I'll start crying if I get into it too much. It's beautiful how it swells. Oh, it's just beautiful. My wife and I were listening to the album last weekend, and she was driving, and she was like, "We got to change the song, man." I can't see. Because it's undeniable how powerful that song is. It is incredible. I think that's it. So I will say, for those of you who are just not into this album at all, I can kind of get that. If you were looking for something that was more of a music focus, not that there's bad music, I think the music's pretty good too, but if you were looking for something that you're going to put, you're going to hear on the radio, you're going to put into your playlist, this ain't that. I would say, if you were not into this one, and maybe you weren't into Melt My Eyes, go back to Melt My Eyes again. Listen to Melt My Eyes again. Denzel Curry made an incredible album. These two I think they absolutely exist in the same vein in terms of lyrical content and what they're talking about. But musically, I like Melt My Eyes more. I think that was a beautifully done album. But there you go. Do you have anything you want to say? Sorry, I just kind of threw you out there. Yeah. I felt myself on the verge of repeating myself, so I knew I was done.
You weren't the only one about the F word.
Oh, really?
That's why I interrupted you earlier, because I thought you messed up.
Oh, interesting.
I thought...
So that was kind of new for you too, right there?
I thought you meant fuck.
Oh,
and so
there you go.
I knew that you were talking about the other.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a slip.
Oh, interesting.
But that word has always made my chest tighten.
Yeah. So for those, she's kind of sitting far away. She said that word, she was kind of coming from the same place I was, but she said that word has always made her chest tighten a little bit. And yeah.
It's not like I'll play around and all
right.
But that one I don't mess with.
There was always just something a little off about that one. You know, there was another thing too. Actually, I should say, going back to that word specifically, there's 2 songs that were out in the 90s too. And one of them was by Korn, and it's, I'm sorry. I pulled you into this, and now I'm telling you now you can't talk. Yes, I was going to say. So one was by Korn, and the second one was by Jewel. Her first album was called Pieces of You, and the track Pieces of You has that word in there. And when that album came out, I think I was like, 14 or something, 15, something like that. And so I loved that album. I listened to that album all the time. And that song would come on, and I always knew, okay, well, that's not a word that you say all the time, but she used it pretty openly and freely in a specific context. It's not like she was just like, oh, this and that. No, listen to the song, specific context. She's using it in a specific way and actually, I would say correctly in the story that she's telling. But I don't know if it was just my age. The sound of the song, it's not like it's a heavy or ugly song. It is kind of sad, but I wonder if those 2 songs kind of existing at the same time just made it exist more as a swear or a bad word instead of a slur.
See, I never saw it as a swear word. I just saw it as one that you just didn't touch.
Yeah. But there was other words like that, though. Like there's the C word for women that you just don't really say that often, but that's not like a slur. Well, that's kind of my point, though.
No, but that's different.
It is different. All right, I'm getting you sidetracked. So there you go. There's 2 people. There's 2 people that Kendrick has had look at something differently because of that song, because of Auntie Diaries. And I think specifically with hip hop, incredibly important song. And I hope the people who are upset about it will hear, I don't know, stories like mine, if they can hear it. Some people, they don't want to hear it. They just want to get mad, you know? And I hope they can reconsider what the song is actually doing. And that's 32 minutes, so we'll leave it there. Fantastic album. I mean, honestly, to me, I guess we're not leaving it there. This album is not an album. This is an experience. I don't know how often I'll come back and listen to this because of what it is. It is more than just music. It is so much more than music. And I'm so glad I was here for it in real time, you know. I would have gone nuts if I was doing it this Friday instead of when it dropped. I would have just been killing myself. I would have been going nuts. Okay. There you go. We'll see you guys. Friday, all my heroes are cornballs. I'm excited. It's going to be a nice kind of departure from seriousness. So I look forward to another Peggy album. It's going to be fun. And I will continue my journey to try and get him on to Conversations with the Community. I have no idea if I have a chance or not, but I have a slight ace up my sleeve. I won't say what it is, but we'll see what happens. Okay. We'll see you guys.